Kofi Mensah had learned long ago that life rarely went according to plan. As he navigated the bustling streets of Accra with his 8-year-old son Kwame beside him, he reflected on how far they'd come since his wife Alma's passing 3 years ago. The July heat pressed down on them like a heavy blanket, but Kwame's excitement about attending the Independence Square Festival made every drop of sweat worthwhile. The festival transformed the historic square into a vibrant celebration of Ghanaian culture. Thousands of people filled the grounds, moving between colorful market stalls selling Kent cloth and beaded jewelry, past stages where high-life music competed with hip-life beats, and around food vendors whose grilled tilapia and jollof rice perfumed the air with mouth-watering aromas. Kofi had saved for 2 months to afford the entrance fees and spending money. His salary as a carpenter barely stretched to cover rent and school fees, but he'd promised Kwame they would attend this year. After missing the past 2 festivals because of work, he refused to disappoint his son again. "Papa, can we see the drummers first?" Kwame asked, tugging his father's hand. "Anything you want, little man," Kofi replied, ruffling his son's hair. They were weaving through the crowd toward the main stage when something small and fast collided with Kofi's legs. He looked down to find a girl, perhaps 6 years old, gripping his trousers with both hands. Her face was wet with tears, her braids coming loose from their carefully placed beads, and her yellow dress, which looked expensive even to Kofi's untrained eye, was smudged with dirt. The child looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes and let out a sob that made his heart clench. "Easy, easy," Kofi said in Twi, crouching to her level. "What's wrong?" But the girl only cried harder, her whole body shaking with the force of her fear. Kwame knelt beside his father, his young face serious. "Don't worry," he told the girl in English. "My papa is very kind. He'll help you." The girl's crying quieted slightly. She looked at Kwame, this boy who seemed so confident, and something in her small frame relaxed just a fraction. "What's your name?" Kofi asked gently, switching to English. "Amara," she managed between hiccups. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Kofi, and this is Kwame. Are you lost?" Amara nodded miserably. "I can't find my mama. There are too many people," and she was talking on the phone, and then I looked away for just a moment, and when I turned back, she was gone. Her voice rose with each word until she was nearly wailing again. It's okay, Kofi soothed, scanning the crowd for anyone who looked like they were searching for a child. But the sea of faces was overwhelming. Families, couples, groups of friends, all moving in different directions under the hot sun. Finding one specific person would be like finding a needle in a haystack. "Let's take you to the information center," Kofi decided. "They have loudspeakers. They can announce that you've been found, and your mama will come get you." Amara immediately reached for his hand. The gesture was automatic, trusting, and it reminded Kofi so much of Kwame at that age that his chest tightened. He took her small, warm hand in his and began making his way toward the information booth near the festival entrance. The journey was slow. The crowd seemed to grow thicker with every step, and Amara whimpered each time someone brushed too close. Without thinking, Kofi lifted her onto his shoulders the way he always carried Kwame when the crowds got too much. She immediately wrapped her arms around his head and buried her face in his hair. "Almost there," he told her. "You're being very brave, Amara." The information center was a small wooden structure painted in the colors of the Ghanaian flag. A harried-looking woman in a festival volunteer shirt was dealing with 3 different people at once, all talking over each other. "Please, one at a time," she was saying, her voice strained. Kofi waited patiently, bouncing Amara gently to keep her calm. Kwame stood close, one hand on his father's leg, watching everything with curious eyes. When they finally reached the front of the line, the volunteer's expression softened at the sight of Amara. "Oh, poor thing. Lost. Found, actually," Kofi said. "Her name is Amara. She got separated from her mother." The woman checked a clipboard. "We don't have a report yet for an Amara, but we've had so many lost children today." She looked at Amara. "What does your mama look like, sweetie?" Amara just shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "She's quite upset," Kofi explained. "Can you make an announcement?" "Of course. We'll broadcast it right away." The woman spoke into a microphone, her voice booming across the festival grounds. "Will the mother of Amara, a young girl in a yellow dress, please come to the information center? Your daughter is safe and waiting for you." They waited outside the booth for 20 minutes, but no one came. The woman made 2 more announcements, each one making Amara more agitated. "Maybe we should walk around the main areas," Kwame suggested, "like near the big fountain or the stage. Her mama might be looking there." Kofi smiled at his son. "That's smart thinking." They moved to the central fountain, an elaborate structure decorated with traditional Adinkra symbols. Kofi positioned them where they could be easily seen under a large banner that read, "Ghana, our homeland." He set Amara down, but kept one hand on her shoulder. "Your mama will find us here," he assured her. "This is where everyone can see us." Kwame started pointing out things to distract Amara. The dancers on the nearby stage, their movements sharp and precise. The vendors selling coconut water, cracking the nuts with a machete. A group of children playing amp, the traditional clapping game. Slowly, Amara's tears dried. She began asking questions, her voice growing steadier. Kwame answered each one with the patience of a much older child, and Kofi felt that familiar swell of pride in his son. After a while, Amara tugged on Kofi's shirt. "I'm Festi." Kofi bought her a bag of cold water and watched as she drank it carefully, some of the tension leaving her small body. She was starting to smile at Kwame's jokes when everything changed. A woman's voice cut through the festival noise like a knife. "Get away from her." Kofi turned to see a woman running toward them, her face twisted with rage and fear. She wore an expensive white dress and gold jewelry that caught the sunlight, her hair in an elaborate updo that was coming apart. 2 large men in black suits followed close behind her. Before Kofi could react, the woman snatched Amara off the ground with such force that the child cried out. "Don't you dare touch my daughter. What were you doing with her?" Kofi stumbled backward, his hands up. "I was helping her. She was lost, and I was waiting for you to find her." "Helping her," the woman spat. "You had her away from the information center. You were taking her somewhere." A crowd was forming. Kofi could feel dozens of eyes on him, could see phones being raised. His heart pounded in his chest. He was a single father, a poor carpenter, and this woman was clearly someone important. Who would believe him? "Mama, stop." Amara's voice cut through the chaos. "Mama, please." "He helped me. And Kwame helped me." The woman froze. She looked down at her daughter, really looked, and seemed to see the situation clearly for the first time. Amara was reaching toward Kwame with one hand, even while clinging to her mother with the other. "What?" the woman whispered. "I got lost," Amara said, her voice small but clear. "I was so scared. But then I found Kofi and Kwame, and they took me to the information center. They made announcements for you. We came here so you could find me easier. He saved me, Mama. He was helping me." The color drained from the woman's face. She looked at Kofi, really looked at him, and seemed to see past her own fear for the first time. She saw his kind eyes, his protective stance near Kwame, the complete absence of threat in his posture. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. I was so scared, and It's okay," Kofi said, though his voice shook slightly. "You were frightened for your daughter. I understand." But she was shaking her head, clutching Amara tight. "No, it's not okay. I accuse you of, in front of all these people." She looked around at the crowd, at the phones still recording, and seemed to shrink into herself. Before Kofi could say anything else, she turned and walked quickly away, her security team creating a path through the onlookers. She never looked back. Kofi stood there, his arm around Kwame, who was pressed against his side and clearly shaken by what had happened. The crowd slowly dispersed, though some people continued to stare. "Papa, why was she so angry?" Kwame asked quietly. "She was scared, Kwame. Sometimes when people are very scared, they don't think clearly. But you helped Amara. I know. And she knows it too now. That's what matters." They stayed at the festival for another hour, but the joy had leaked out of the day. Kwame was quieter than usual, and Kofi couldn't stop replaying the scene in his mind. The accusations, the looks from the crowd, the way that woman had assumed the worst of him. He understood her fear. If Kwame had been lost, he would have been terrified too. But the way she'd looked at him, like he was something dangerous, something to be feared, it had cut deeper than he wanted to admit. They were heading toward the exit when one of the security guards from earlier appeared beside them. "Excuse me, sir. Mrs. Osei would like to speak with you." Kofi hesitated. "Mrs. Osei, Amara's mother. She's waiting in the VIP area. Please, she wants to apologize properly." Kofi looked down at Kwame, who shrugged. "Maybe we should go, Papa." Amara was nice. The VIP section was like a different world. Air-conditioned tents with plush seating, tables laden with food, and festival staff attending to every need. Kofi felt profoundly out of place in his simple shirt and worn trousers, but the guard led them to a private tent where Mrs. Osei waited. She rose as they entered. Up close, Kofi could see she'd been crying. Her makeup was smudged, and her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them in front of her. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you after how I behaved." "You were scared," Kofi said. "Any parent would understand. That doesn't excuse it." She took a shaky breath. "I accuse you of something terrible. In public. In front of your son. There's no excuse for that." Amara appeared from behind her mother's legs, running straight to Kwame. "You came." Kwame's face lit up. Amada." Mrs. Osei watched the children, a strange expression crossing her face. "Amara hasn't stopped talking about Kwame since we got here. She said he was very kind when she was frightened." "He's a good boy," Kofi said quietly. "So are you a good man, clearly. And I treated you like." She couldn't finish the sentence. "Please, Mrs. Osei, it's in the past. Call me Abina," she said. "And no, it's not in the past. Not yet." She gestured to the chairs. "Please sit. Let the children play while we talk." Over the next hour, Kofi learned that Abina Osei was one of the wealthiest women in Ghana. She owned a technology company that had revolutionized mobile banking across West Africa. She was powerful, influential, and according to her own admission, rarely home. "My husband died when Amara was a baby," she said, watching her daughter laugh with Kwame. "I threw myself into work, built the company bigger than I ever imagined. But I miss so much of Amara's life. Birthdays, school events, bedtime stories. I always thought I was doing it for her, building a future for her. But today, when I thought I'd lost her," her voice broke. "You didn't lose her," Kofi said gently. "Because of you." Abina looked at him. "You could have just taken her to information and left. But you stayed with her, kept her calm, treated her like she was your own. Because I want someone to do the same for Kwame." "Not everyone would." Kofi shrugged. "Then, not everyone should be a parent." The words hung in the air. Abina stared at him, and something shifted in her expression. "My wife used to say something similar," Kofi continued. "She said being a parent wasn't about what you could give your child in terms of money or things. It was about showing up, being present, making them feel safe. She sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. I miss her every day. I'm sorry for your loss." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching their children. Amara was showing Kwame a toy she'd pulled from her bag, their heads bent together in concentration. "Amara doesn't have many friends," Abina said quietly. "The children at her school, their families all move in the same circles. Everything feels calculated. But with Kwame, she's just herself. Kwame doesn't have many friends either. We move around a lot for work. Hard to put down roots." Abina turned to him. "What if we could help each other? Amara's school has an opening. It's one of the best in Accra. I'd like to sponsor Kwame's enrollment." The temperature in the tent seemed to drop. Kofi's expression hardened. "You want to pay for my son's education? As a thank you for—" "No." The word came out sharper than he intended. "I don't understand. It's a good school, excellent teachers. It's charity. It's gratitude. It feels like you're saying I can't provide for my own son." Kofi stood, his jaw tight. "I may not have your money, Mrs. Osei, but I take care of Kwame. He's happy. He's healthy. He's loved. That's enough." Abina rose too, frustration flashing across her face. "That's not what I meant at all." "Then what did you mean?" "That poor carpenter and his son need rescuing." "I meant that our daughters could be friends." Abina's voice rose. I meant that Amara lights up around Kwame in a way I haven't seen in months. I meant that maybe, just maybe, we could help each other because God knows I don't have all the answers about how to raise a child alone. The words echoed in the tent. Both adults breathing hard, staring at each other. Kwame's voice broke the tension. Papa, are you and Miss Abina fighting? Kofi looked at his son, then at Amara, who was watching with worried eyes. He took a deep breath. No, son, we're just talking. It sounded like fighting, Kwame said seriously. Abina crouched down to Amara's level. Everything's fine, honey. Sometimes grown-ups have to work through difficult conversations. Amara looked at Kwame. I don't want you to go. You're my friend. You're my friend too, Kwame said. The two children looked so earnest, so hopeful, that Kofi felt his anger deflate. He ran a hand over his face. Look, he said to Abina, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I need to think about it. This is a big decision. Of course, Abina said quickly. Take all the time you need. I'm not trying to fix you or save you or any of that. I just saw something today that I haven't seen in a long time. My daughter being truly happy. And your son is a big part of that. Kofi nodded slowly. Kwame doesn't have many kids in his life either. His mother's family is in the Volta region, and we don't see them often. Then maybe this isn't about charity at all. Maybe it's about two single parents trying to give their kids something good. Before Kofi could respond, an announcement came over the speakers. The evening's main event was about to begin, a performance by one of Ghana's biggest musicians. I have seats in the VIP section, Abina said hesitantly. Would you join us? Just for the show. Kofi looked at Kwame, who was practically vibrating with excitement. His son had been talking about this performance for weeks. Okay, Kofi said. But just the show. The VIP section had the best view in the entire festival. Kofi and Kwame sat with Abina and Amara as the stage came alive with dancers in traditional clothing, their movements telling stories of Ghana's history. The music was incredible, a fusion of old and new, drums and guitars, Twi and English. Kwame was mesmerized. Kofi watched his son's face, glowing with joy, and felt grateful he'd agreed to stay. During a quiet moment between acts, Abina leaned closer. I'm sorry about earlier. About assuming you needed help. That was wrong. And I'm sorry for being so defensive. You were trying to do something nice. My husband used to tell me I had a bad habit of trying to solve every problem with money. My wife told me I had a bad habit of being too proud to accept help. They shared a small smile. Maybe we're both a little right and a little wrong, Abina said. Maybe. The show continued, and somehow, over the next 2 hours, the awkwardness between them faded. They talked during the breaks, sharing stories about their children, their struggles, their hopes. Kofi told her about the time Kwame had tried to cook him breakfast and nearly burned down the kitchen. Abina told him about Amara's obsession with building things out of cardboard boxes, entire cities that took over half their house. They laughed together, really laughed, and it felt natural. Easy. When the show ended, neither seemed in a hurry to leave. The children were tired, Amara leaning against her mother, while Kwame's eyes drooped against his father's shoulder. This was nice, Abina said. Thank you for staying. Thank you for inviting us. She hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. This has my personal number on it. Not my assistant's, not my office. Mine. If you decide about the school, or if you just want to arrange a play day for the kids, call me. Kofi took the card, feeling its expensive weight. Okay. I mean it, Kofi. Not because I feel guilty. Not because I'm trying to fix anything. But because I think our children could be good for each other. And maybe, she paused. Maybe we could be friends too. I'd like that, Kofi said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. They parted ways at the festival exit. Kwame was fully asleep now, and Kofi carried him on his back, the boy's arms loose around his neck. He turned to wave at Abina and Amara, who were climbing into a sleek black car. Amara waved back enthusiastically until they disappeared from view. The next few weeks passed in a blur of phone calls and text messages. Abina insisted she wasn't pressuring him about the school, but she did invite Kwame and Kofi to several events, a children's museum exhibition, a beach cleanup that Amara's school was sponsoring, and a quiet Sunday lunch at her house in Airport Hills. Each time, Kofi felt the gap between their worlds. Her house was enormous, with art on the walls and a swimming pool in the back. She had staff, people who cooked and cleaned and tended the garden. It was everything Kofi's modest rental in Nima was not. But each time, Abina made him feel welcome. Not like a charity case, not like someone she pitied, but like a friend. She asked his opinion on things, listened when he spoke, and treated Kwame with the same warmth she showed Amara. One evening, after the children had fallen asleep watching a movie, Abina and Kofi sat on her veranda, watching the lights of Accra spread out below them. "I've made a decision," Kofi said. "About the school." Abina turned to him, her expression carefully neutral. "Okay, I want to accept, but I needed to be alone. I'll pay you back, even if it takes years." "Kofi, please, let me finish." He took a breath. "Kwame deserves opportunities. I can see that now, and I've been letting my pride stand in the way of that. But I need to know I'm still providing for him, even if I need help to do it." Abina was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, we'll work out a payment plan. Something manageable. But Kofi, I need you to understand something. This isn't about money for me. It's about Amara having a real friend. Someone who doesn't care about her last name or what I do for a living. That's worth more than any school fees. She has that with Kwame. I know, and I'm grateful for it." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the city. "Can I ask you something?" Abina said. "That day at the festival, when I accused you, were you angry?" "Honestly, yes, but more hurt than angry. It reminded me of how people see me sometimes. Just another poor man. Someone to be suspicious of. I am sorry. You've apologized enough. I've forgiven you. Have you forgiven yourself?" Kofi looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "For whatever you think you failed at. With Kwame, with providing, with being enough. Have you forgiven yourself?" The question hit him like a physical blow. He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. Had he forgiven himself? For not being able to save Alma. For not giving Kwame the life other children had. For all the times he came up short despite trying his best. "I don't know," he said finally. "Then maybe that's something we both need to work on," Abina said softly. "Forgiving ourselves for being human. For not being perfect. For doing the best we can with what we have." 2 months later, on a bright September morning, Kofi walked Kwame to his first day at Amara's school. His son looked smart in the new uniform, his backpack heavy with supplies, his face a mixture of nervousness and excitement. "You're going to do great," Kofi told him at the gate. "What if the other kids don't like me? Then they're missing out. But I think they will. You're pretty likable." Kwame grinned. "Papa, that's embarrassing. Being loved is never embarrassing." Amara ran up then, grabbing Kwame's hand. "Come on, I want to show you where our classroom is." Kofi watched them run off together, his heart full. Abina appeared beside him, elegant in her business suit. "They'll be fine," she said. "I know. It's just hard to let go." "Yeah." They walked back to the parking area together. Abina's driver waited with the car, but she seemed in no hurry to leave. "There's a parent association meeting next week," she said. "They always need volunteers. I thought maybe you'd want to join me." "Parents association?" Kofi laughed. "I'm not sure I'm the type." "You're exactly the type. You're a parent who cares. That's all it takes. I work during the day. They meet in the evenings. And before you say anything about being too tired, remember that I work too. We'll figure it out together." Kofi looked at this woman who had come into his life in the most unexpected way, who had gone from accusing him of the worst to becoming one of his closest friends, who made him laugh and challenged him and saw him as an equal despite the enormous gap in their circumstances. "Okay," he said. "I'll come to the meeting." Her smile was radiant. "Good, because I need someone to keep me grounded at these things. The other parents can be a bit much. I don't know if I'm a grounding type. You are. Trust me." Over the next several months, Kofi and Abina's friendship deepened. They coordinated school pickups and playdates, attended PTA meetings and school events together, and found themselves talking on the phone late at night about everything and nothing. Kwame thrived at his new school. He made friends, excelled in his classes, and developed a passion for science that Kofi encouraged even though he barely understood half of what his son talked about. But the real transformation was in how Kwame carried himself. He was more confident, more sure of his place in the world. And Kofi thrived too, in ways he hadn't expected. The payment plan Abina had set up was fair and manageable, and he took pride in making each installment on time. His carpentry business grew through referrals from some of the parents at Kwame's school, people who appreciated quality work and were willing to pay fairly for it. But more than that, he felt less alone. He had someone to share the burden of single parenthood with, someone who understood the fear and the joy and the overwhelming responsibility of it all. One evening, 6 months after that fateful festival day, Kofi was working late in his shop when his phone rang. It was Abina, her voice tight with stress. "I need help. The nanny canceled last minute. I have an emergency board meeting, and Amara's running a fever. I don't know what to do." "Bring her here," Kofi said immediately. "I'll watch her." "Are you sure?" "I know you're working." "Abina, bring her." "It's fine." An hour later, Abina arrived with a sleepy, flushed Amara. Kofi took the child gently, feeling her forehead. "She's warm but not dangerously so. I'll give her some medicine and keep her comfortable. I'll be back as soon as I can. 2 hours, maybe 3. Take your time. We'll be fine." And they were. Kofi set up a bed of blankets in the corner of his workshop, gave Amara medicine, and let her rest while he worked on a custom bookshelf for a client. Kwame, who'd come straight from school, sat with Amara, reading to her from one of his favorite books. When Abina returned 4 hours later, she found all 3 of them asleep. Kwame and Amara curled up together under the blankets, Kofi in a chair beside them, his hand resting protectively on their shoulders. She stood in the doorway of the workshop, looking at this scene, and felt something shift in her chest. Something warm and terrifying and wonderful all at once. "Thank you," she said softly when Kofi woke. "Anytime," he replied, and meant it. The rainy season came, turning across streets to rivers and keeping everyone indoors more than usual. On one particularly stormy Saturday, with both children at a birthday party, Abina invited Kofi to her house for lunch. They sat in her kitchen, simpler and cozier than the formal dining room, eating groundnut soup and fufu that Abina had made herself. "This is delicious," Kofi said, surprised. "Did you think I couldn't cook? I thought you had people for that." "Ido. But I grew up cooking with my grandmother. It's one of the few things that makes me feel close to her still." They talked about families, about growing up, about dreams they'd had as children. Kofi learned that Abina had wanted to be a teacher before her husband's death forced her to take over his failing business. She learned that Kofi had dreamed of being an architect before circumstances made him a carpenter instead. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "The path your life took." "Sometimes. But then I look at Kwame, and I think maybe this was the path I was always meant to take." "What about you?" "I don't regret building the company, but I regret what it cost me with Amara. All those moments I can't get back. You're here now. That's what matters." "Is it enough?" "It has to be. We can't change the past. We can only show up for today." Abina looked at him across the table. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a carpenter who's made enough mistakes to learn a few things." "You're more than that, Kofi. Much more." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither was quite ready to name. Christmas came, and with it, an invitation. Abina wanted to host a celebration at her house, just the 4 of them. No staff, no fancy caterers, just 2 families coming together. Kofi brought palm wine and a carved wooden nativity scene he'd made himself. Abina gasped when she saw it, running her fingers over the delicate figures. "This is incredible. You made this. It's not much. It's beautiful." They cooked together, the children helping in their own chaotic way. They laughed when the jollof rice burned slightly, and celebrated when the chicken came out perfectly. They ate sitting on the floor of the living room, Christmas lights twinkling around them, and it felt like family. After the children fell asleep by the tree, still clutching their new toys, Abina and Kofi sat together on the couch. "This was the best Christmas I've had in years," Abina said. "Me too. I never thank you properly. For that day, at the festival. For everything that came after. You've thanked me plenty. No, I mean really thank you. You changed my life, Kofi. You showed me what was important. How to be present. How to let go of control and just be. You did the same for me. You showed me that accepting help isn't weakness. That we're stronger together than apart. She turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I don't know what this is, what we are, but I know I don't want it to end. Neither do I. Kofi reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. It felt right, natural, like a missing piece sliding into place. What do we do now? Abina asked. I think we take it one day at a time. Keep showing up for each other. For the kids. See where it leads. No plans. No 5-year strategy. She smiled through her tears. Some things can't be planned. Sometimes you just have to trust. I'm not very good at that. Neither am I. We'll learn together. Outside, the Christmas lights of Accra twinkled in the darkness. Inside, two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way sat hand in hand, watching their children sleep, feeling hope bloom in their chests for the first time in years. Whatever came next, whatever challenges they would face, they knew one truth with absolute certainty. Sometimes the greatest gifts don't come wrapped in expensive paper. Sometimes they find you in a crowded festival square in the form of a frightened child who needs help. A moment that could have ended in disaster, but instead opened a door to something beautiful. A chance to discover that family isn't always about blood or money or having everything figured out. Sometimes it's about showing up, being present, and having the courage to trust that together you can build something strong enough to weather any storm. Kofi looked at the woman beside him, the children sleeping peacefully, the home they'd created together through laughter and tears and unwavering support. And he knew, with the same certainty he'd felt when he first picked up a crying child in a crowd, that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The future stretched out before them, unknown and full of possibilities. But they would face it together, as partners, as friends, as something more. And that was more than enough. Outside, rain began to fall, gentle and cleansing. Inside, for hearts beat together in warmth, in safety, in love. And somewhere in the night, the city of Accra carried on its endless rhythm, full of millions of stories, but none quite as unexpected or beautiful as this one. A single father and a billionaire mother, brought together by a lost child in a moment of crisis, now building something neither had dared to dream possible. Proof that sometimes, when you stop trying to control everything and simply open yourself to the possibilities, life has a way of giving you exactly what you need.